how our school was a cozy and simple place, but not everything was simple there. Among the 10 to 12-year-old students, there was a boy named Hamid, who was different from the others. His eyes were always red, and his eyelids were heavy. Every day in class, listless and tired, his head fell on the table, and his snoring got louder. He became thinner and paler, day by day. One day, when class was over, I held him and started talking. Hamid confessed in a quiet voice that he stayed up late at night. He said that he went with his grandmother to the spring, sometimes alone. This made me think, would a 10-year-old go to a dangerous spring in the middle of the night, where a wolf or 1,000 other things might be lurking? The next morning, Hamid didn't come to school. I was heartbroken. One of the children, Reza, said that he had seen Hamid and his grandmother late the previous night, walking down the street. When I asked Reza why, he said in a trembling voice, "My father says that when Hamid comes back, he is not feeling well," as if he is sleepy, and repeats incoherent sentences out loud. Reza revealed that Hamid's parents had died, and that he was living with his grandmother. Reza, as his mother, said that this old woman was a mean person who ruined people's lives by writing prayers and dealing with genies. The blood that had boiled in my veins drew me towards the old woman's house. The old wooden door of her house smelled strangely, the smell of incense, and another unknown, bitter smell. When I entered the courtyard, I saw that old and young people with worried faces had gathered around the old devil to solve the problem. Her eyes were shining like 2 black marbles in her wrinkled face. I couldn't control myself. I shouted, "Aren't you ashamed, old woman? Don't you fear God? Where are you sending this child in the middle of the night?" The old woman also threw me out with her hoarse voice. That night, the cold was even worse outside. The oil heater was lit with difficulty. Uga Mirzai and his wife brought some food and blankets. Uga Mirzai's wife said with a worried look, "Just lock the door to the yard. At night, wolves come in the window." These words made me shiver, but I had no choice. After dinner, I read a book of poetry in absolute silence. It was past midnight. The snow was still falling, and from time to time I could hear the howling of wolves in the distance. I felt the air getting cold again. The oil for the heater had run out. I filled a pot, and the flames came to life. Hamid was standing behind the door. The alley was completely dark and blinding, and heavy snow was falling in the deadly cold. I asked in a trembling voice, "Hamid, here at this time of night, why did you come alone?" He said nothing. He just looked at me with his oppressed eyes, a look full of sadness and fear that shook my heart. Finally, in a very quiet voice, as if coming from the bottom of a well, he said, "Madam teacher, my grandmother wants to talk to you. You need to talk to her tonight." When he said that his grandmother was in the village bathhouse, an old bathhouse, I was confused. I closed the school door and followed the boy. Walking in that snow and darkness was absolutely terrifying. We reached a slope at the bottom of which was a large, old wooden door. A faint light was shining from under the door. Hamid stood right there at the foot of the stairs and said, "Please, Madam Teacher, I will wait for you here." I went down with a sinking fear. With every step I took, I heard strange whispers and small laughter coming from inside. A bitter smell that resembled burnt plants filled my nostrils. I tried to go out, but as soon as I turned around, I panicked and took a step back. The few old women who had been sitting around the treasury were now standing behind me, in front of the door. They were staring at me, motionless and unblinking. Suddenly, my eyes fell on their hands and feet. My whole body trembled. Their hands were long and hairy. Their hands and feet looked like animals. They seemed to be a combination of animals and humans. One of them repeated the same sentence. "You two, come and take a dip in the water." Then they all laughed together, but their voices had changed. A hoarse, rough, inhuman voice. My breath was caught in fear, and my heart was pounding. I couldn't stand it anymore. My eyes went black and I fell to the ground. Uga Mirza said, "God have mercy on you. Uncle Faizi saw you going down. We followed you and saw you lying here." I looked around. I was in a dark ruin and there was no sign of the bathroom or the treasury. A little further down was the same spring that evil creature sent to me there. Uga Mirza helped me get out of that ruin. A few days later, the road opened and I returned to the city. The fear of that incident was in my soul and I had nightmares every night. My family did not allow me to return to that village. It all started with a brief glance. A glance that, amidst the hubbub of a party, made Ferrick's heart beat faster. He was a man who was always ridiculed for his obesity, and even the buttons on his shirt struggled to stay closed. He had fallen in love with Mania, his brother's sister. To win her heart, Farrak went to Nariman's gym. But one night, when he returned to the dark gym to pick up his watch, he was confronted with a nightmarish reality. In that heavy silence, the sound of gurgling water and wet footsteps led him to a hall whose walls were covered with hundreds of mirrors. The mirrors showed him in deformed and frightening shapes. Suddenly, a ghost resembling Nariman appeared with snake-like arms and peeled off the skin of his face, revealing a skeletal skull. That night, Farrak met his evil self amidst the black smoke and broken mirrors, and when he woke up the next morning on the floor of the club, he was no longer the same person. 2 years passed, and Farrak became the two-legged monster. A creature who trapped girls behind a monitor with fake accounts and an old photo. Tired of his parents' torture, he confessed that he had deliberately twisted the steering wheel on the northern road and sent them to the bottom of the valley. He even spread private photos of his brother's wife, Maria, on the internet to destroy their lives in revenge for his brother. His hunt began with Mehbooba, a girl who was knocked unconscious by poisoned coffee, and Farrak took her to a garden house and slit her throat from ear to ear. He buried his victims, including Azar and a student girl, under the trees of Tabriz, believing that it was Tehran's second cemetery, which he visited every week without a fight. Ilnaz was the next victim, a girl whom Farrak took to the Azadi cinema. In the darkness of the theater, told her about a script called Sandwich with Blood Sauce. After dinner, when Elnaz wanted to return home, Farrak changed directions on the highway and, amidst the girl's screams in the tunnel, unconsciously tied Elnaz to a chair in a house that smelled strongly of mothballs and drank tea bags over her head, her eyes red from sleeplessness. Farrak wanted to kill Elnaz consciously because he had feelings for her. But Elnaz, who was drenched in fear, took advantage of Farrak's negligence in a moment and hit her on the head with a piece of a broken chair and fled the slaughterhouse. Farrak, now a fugitive with a fake passport, was tempted to strike his final blow by a message from his brother Faradun, who had sent Mania's address. He went to an old villa with ivy hanging from its walls and opened the gas taps, waiting to destroy Mania's and her wife. But suddenly, the doors were locked, and Feridan's voice came from behind the door, saying, "This is not Mania's house. This is my new house. I have realized what kind of animal you are, and how you destroyed our family." Faradun had set a deadly trap for the snake he had nurtured in his sleeve. Hearing the sound of the police siren, Varric placed a lighter that resembled a gun under his throat and pulled the trigger, ending his life of hatred in a horrific explosion. This happened to my grandmother. My grandmother has recently moved in with us and has been telling us a lot of her supernatural experiences since she arrived. This story happened in 1974 in Anambra State, Nigeria. My grandmother was 49 years old at the time. On a Saturday, she got a call from the hospital, and the nurse said that her daughter, my aunt, who was pregnant, was going into labor and needed to be delivered immediately. The rain was coming down really bad, but since it was an emergency, my grandmother set off quickly. The hospital was about a 15-minute walk from her house. My grandmother was walking, and the rain was getting heavier and heavier. The streets were deserted. The water was everywhere, and there were no cars in sight. My grandmother said she was afraid to walk through the water because it was dangerous, but she also didn't want to leave her daughter alone in that situation. He didn't know what to do and stood on the side of the road hesitantly. Then suddenly a white van appeared out of nowhere and stopped in front of him. He said he hadn't seen any cars coming at all, and that's why he was very surprised to see the van. Inside the van was a man wearing a uniform, like a security guard's uniform. He asked him where he was going. Grandma told him that he had to get to the hospital right away. The man said, "Come on, get in." And I got in. As soon as he reached the hospital, he got out, thanked the man, and headed for the entrance in front of the hospital door. He saw his friend. His friend had also heard that my aunt was giving birth and had arrived early. My grandmother's friend was surprised to see him and asked how we had gotten there in the rain. My grandmother told him that someone had been kind enough to give him a ride. Then he turned to point to where the van was. But to his surprise, the van was not there. It seemed to have gone up in smoke and vanished. The strangest part was that my grandmother's friend told her, in a daze, that she had never seen a van. The street was long and straight, and if you looked, you could see the van from afar. But when my grandmother looked down the street, there was no van. Not even in the distance. The road was deserted, and the rain was still pouring down heavily. She told me that whenever she thought about it, her hair stood on end, and she still didn't know who the man was, where the van had come from, or why he had helped her get to the hospital. Unknown footsteps. This story happened to me a few years ago. One night my mom and dad went out to dinner. They told me to go with them, but I had an exam the next day and had to stay home and study. At 7 p.m. my mom and dad left and I was left alone. I was sitting in my room studying when after about an hour it started raining heavily. The sound of the rain didn't let me study, so I put on my headphones to listen to music and not hear the rain. Since I had my headphones on, I couldn't hear anything. That's why I didn't notice that half an hour later, the door to our house opened. After a while, I got thirsty, so I took off my headphones and went to the kitchen. As I was walking down the stairs, I heard footsteps. I knew my mom and dad weren't going to be back anytime soon, so I suspected it was them. We had a window in the stairwell that looked out onto the parking lot, but when I looked out of there, I couldn't see my mom and dad's car. As soon as I realized this, I ran back to my room and locked the door. I called my mom and dad and told them what had happened, and they immediately left the restaurant and came home. My dad told me to stay in my room and quietly go into my closet. My mom and dad called the police, and I went into the closet and hid there. From there, I could hear him coming up the stairs. He was opening the doors one by one. When he got to my door and realized it was locked, he started yelling and trying to kick it open. Opened the door. Luckily, as soon as he kicked the door open and entered the room, a police siren sounded in the distance. He ran away, and I stayed in the closet until the police arrived. After that, The police searched the entire neighborhood, but they didn't find anyone. I never stayed home alone again after that, and I never listened to music with headphones again. God knows what would have happened if I hadn't been thirsty and taken my headphones off.